USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay.
Well, welcome to Top of the Morning. This is Christine Cornels, and we are so glad to have you with us. We are filming on the top of the USS Constellation in downtown Baltimore. And if you haven't seen the ship yourself, you must come and see it yourself. There's a lot of history to learn and a lot of Baltimore to learn about while you're down here. And while we're here, we are meeting with Lynn Fitrell, who has been active so much in Maryland and in Baltimore. And Lynn, I also noticed she is in incredible physical condition, physical shape. How do you stay in such good shape at your age?
Hard work. I walk 4 to 5 miles a day.
Wow.
I spend at least 5 days a week at the local gym, lifting weights, working out there. I try to walk wherever I go.
Rather than drive?
Yes. Or like today when we were over in the one of the buildings, and one of the janitors said you can take the elevator upstairs to the restrooms. We opted for taking the steps up to the.
So it's just choices like that along the way. That's
exactly.
Fantastic.
I encourage everybody to do that, women especially, because they tend to be more sedentary.
Yes, yeah, and I also understand that you were working 40 hours a week, volunteering at a job, and then from something that your husband said is that you retired, and then now you're working 80 hours a week. Tell us what you're doing.
Okay, in addition to being on the Maryland Commission for Women, which I'm very proud and delighted to be, and all the activities that are involved there. For instance, we just had the Women of Tomorrow program, where we recognized 6 young women from the ages of 7th grade through 12th grade for their outstanding academic achievement, their leadership skills, and their community work. They were fantastic.
It must be very inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody in the room was in tears because they were just phenomenal young women. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. And then we worked on the Women's Hall of Fame. In addition to that, I am on several other boards. For instance, I'm on the Historic Sauterley Plantation Board, and particularly after Hurricane Irene, when like 170 some trees came down, one of them just barely missing the manor house and did hit the smokehouse.
Oh, wow.
We spent a lot of time over there working and getting that back in shape. Fundraising.
All volunteering your time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hauling trees or cleaning up debris. I'm also in charge of the collections at the plantation. So I'm frequently hauling artifacts up here to Baltimore or into DC to various other specialists and curators for repair and renovation. So we do a lot of things.
Well, I'm hearing the word hauling a lot. I see this trend of physical exercise. You're doing it not only in your own personal disciplines, but also in your volunteer work, it sounds like, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always a very physical challenge no matter what I'm doing or where I'm going, whether it's hauling information and materials into an event, or whether it's going to Sauterley and doing things, or down to St. Mary's City and working with those people down there.
And what's some of the history? It sounds like you really enjoy sharing some of the history and making sure people remember what happened in this area.
Absolutely. I enjoyed the time that I worked in Baltimore. I worked up here, well, off and on up here. I was working on the governor's staff for about 12 years. And I transitioned on a couple of governors.
Oh, did you? What did you do on the staff?
On the staff, well, first of all, just to go back to my age and what I do in my life, I finally finished my college education along with my children at the same time at the University of Maryland.
Congratulations.
And my final year, I spent an internship in the legislative office with Governor Hughes, and then went on to spend the next 8 years as executive assistant to Governor Schaefer.
So you were right there in the heart of what was going on.
Oh, absolutely. And when you talk about recessions and economic downturns, we certainly saw it during the Schaefer administration. It was a very difficult time.
Is some of what you saw while you were working for the governor kind of drive your decisions of what to get involved in today? Kind of seeing what the issues that citizens of Maryland?
More or less, yes. I've always been, like as I said before, I've always been very much involved in issues pertaining to women and their families, their children. And certainly, when I was on the governor's staff, that was those were among the issues that I would be responsible for dealing with and carrying out certain events in order to recognize what was going on in the state of Maryland for these people. But certainly spending a lot of time here in Baltimore got me even more interested in Maryland history, and I've always been interested in history, so I'm kind of transitioning from working with very sad issues and concerns with people to kind of the fun things and the historic things, and trying to mix them all together and see what we can do. I mean, I'm really, really pleased and proud of my work at Sotterly particularly. It is the only, they have the only existing slave quarters left in the state, in the Tidewater area of the state. And we are very fortunate to have Agnes Kane Callum, who is a Baltimorean and historian, come and visit us and broaden our perspective on the issues pertaining to slaves and slave women in particular, which we just had one event about 3 weeks ago that focused in on the history of what happens to women on plantations and what their lives were like, whether you were the lady of the house in the plantation house or whether you were the house slave who was responsible for caring for the children and the food.
Just giving people a real clear, practical understanding of what it was like to live during that time.
Absolutely.
And to experience the atrocities really of that time.
Absolutely. War of 1812, which of course we're hearing a lot about now, and when the British came into St. Mary's County and landed near Sotterly Plantation and offered escape for some of the slaves.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yes, and many of them went. But many of them stayed because they had families and they didn't want to leave their families behind.
Well, for those of us who live in the area and who love Maryland and may not be as involved in preserving the history or in reaching out to their neighbor, what kind of encouragement do you give to us to become involved in what's going on here in Baltimore and in Maryland?
Be aware of your community and what's available in your community. I so frequently hear, just using Sotterly as an example, oh, I didn't know it was here. Well, how would you not know it was here? But if you're looking at, especially the opportunity now with the War of 1812 celebrations going on, is to follow what's in your newspaper, what's in your local historical society. Come downtown to downtown Inner Harbor, Baltimore.
Just walk around.
It's all here.
Yeah,
and you can find it. I mean, every Chamber of Commerce has information. All the historical societies have information. You can definitely get involved and know what's going on in your community. And there isn't a community in the state of Maryland that doesn't have something going on.
Right. Well, you're such a great promoter of Baltimore. We're so glad you're with us on the show. We'll be right back.
The ship you see here, the sloop of war Constellation, was built at the Gosport Navy Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia, and launched in 1854. A newspaper account from the day of her launch reported that there were 8 pieces of the original frigate Constellation contained within her timbers.
We are so glad to have you with us. We have a very special show today. We are filming here on top of the USS Constellation in downtown Baltimore. And if you haven't seen this ship, you should come down and see it because it is quite a treat. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Great. Well, it'd be nice to have you share a little bit about who you are and some of the activities that you enjoy participating here.
Most recently, I was the director of the Legal Assistance Program for Victims of Domestic Violence. I work with rape crisis programs, child abuse programs, and I've been involved with the Commission for Women for a number of years. I was appointed
That's the Maryland Commission of Women?
The Maryland Commission, but before that I was with the St. Mary's County Commission for Women and was their president for a number of years.
Wow.
And got involved with the National Organization of Commissions for Women.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
What is the national organization?
The national organization actually is housed in Montgomery County right now, but it does bring together commissions for women from throughout the country, and we share information on issues pertaining to women, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, health issues, economic issues, anything of that nature. So we can share that information and figure out how we can assist women who are in unusual circumstances and trying to make a better life for themselves.
fantastic. Well, you have done a significant amount. What got you interested in these type of topics or in helping women?
Like I said, I think I've been doing this ever since I was a child.
Oh, yeah?
I was very, very interested. I had very strong role models in my two grandmothers who were widowed at a very young age and had large families to raise.
That's a lot of challenges to face.
Yes, absolutely. And getting through the depression with their children and having them all turn out to be good, productive people. And I spent a lot of time with them and watching them work and make things happen within their families and outside of their families. How did they support themselves?
It would have been very difficult back then.
It was very difficult because obviously when you had a large family to take care of in the home, you probably couldn't leave the home. So you had to learn to do things within your home. And we often chuckle at the story that my grandmother got arrested for bootlegging, because that was one of the ways she was helping to feed her
is
children.
that right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it was illegal at the time.
Absolutely,
selling alcohol.
absolutely. Yeah, right.
Wow, what a wonderful beginning and a wonderful start to have kind of the role models of your grandmothers. But I know a lot of women don't necessarily have that. Either they're separated from their families or the generations aren't with them. What sort of things do you like to do with helping the community to help women kind of find good role models?
Well, it was interesting. Early on, right after I arrived in Maryland, which is about a little over 30 years ago, I within weeks became involved in a program setting up this women's center down in St. Mary's County, which initially started as a displaced homemaker center, which what we were doing is we worked with the community college. In fact, actually became part of the community college in La Plata. And we tried to show women what paths they could take, did career orientations, testing to see what would be good for them, what courses might be available to community college for them, what job opportunities may be available in the community, what other issues they were going to be facing, whether it could be housing issues or child care issues, transportation issues, and getting them on that path.
So you were involved in these issues, yeah, from the get-go. And it sounds like really finding a way to connect women to the resource that are available.
Exactly.
Because so often we don't know what resources are out there. We don't realize that there's opportunities for us.
Exactly, and I've continued on that way, like I said, as long as I can remember. I've been working toward those issues. I mean, even before I got involved here in Maryland, I was a volunteer in the Navy Relief Society, which assisted the young wives primarily as their husbands were deployed, and particularly young enlisted people who had practically no money and found themselves in big financial difficulties, and what do they do now? And so I was a counselor and would talk with them and try to help them through, teach them how to make a budget and hopefully keep to it, even given the...
Oh, interesting. A skill that we don't necessarily learn in school.
Exactly, and many of them had no clue that they should be putting money aside for their rent, for their food, for their child care.
So it's very practical things. I mean, it sounds like you look for very practical things.
Absolutely, it's not pie in the sky at all.
Wow. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Lynn, thank you so much for sharing about your experiences here in Baltimore. I did want to ask you, what was it like for women 50 years ago? Because those of us today don't realize how far we've come and how far organizations like the Maryland Commission for Women have helped women come. If you could share with the audience a little bit about what it used to be like.
Absolutely. 50 years ago, I was a young mother with 2 children, and it was expected that I was going to stay home, obviously. With my husband being in the Navy, that didn't make it too difficult.
Traveled a lot, I'm sure.
We had to travel a lot, so maintaining a career was very difficult. And in those days, if you're going off to college, you were probably going to be a nurse or a teacher, and that was it. And the hard part about that with moving around was the tenure for women teachers. They didn't get tenure.
They didn't.
No, because they were moving all the time. They weren't in any given school district long enough to do that. And even if they had tenure, if they got pregnant, they had to quit. And
They
go
were
home.
forced to quit? Or just not
Many
to quit?
school districts, most school districts actually. And I remember as a young girl growing up, I think I had one married teacher, and she had one child, and everybody wondered how she was managing being a teacher. And then another one who was a widow, and the others were all not married, but when they did get married, first thing they did after they were expecting a child, they had to leave the school system. And for instance, when I was graduating from high school, and my father and I was definitely going to go off to college, and I definitely was not going to follow a traditional role, and he could not, my father, who was a very, very dear man, absolutely wonderful, was very perplexed. He didn't understand why I was going to college in the first place, because I was already engaged.
Well, and where did you find that drive? What encouraged you to do that if women were experiencing that at the time?
I don't know. I guess it was my contrary nature that I just was not going to follow a traditional path. That's all there was to it. I was not going to do that. And poor Daddy just kind of looked at me like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, at that time, I was thinking, I don't want to be a nurse. Maybe I'll be a pediatrician instead.
Good, yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me and shook his head and went, okay, well, we'll help you as best we can, but not sure how far we can go with
I'm
that.
sure he knew you were capable of it, but it wasn't a common thing.
Oh, absolutely. And as the years went on, whenever I was doing something different and unusual, like one time I was taking lessons on skydiving.
Oh my goodness. You were brave.
And always, well, I never made it, so that's okay, but you just wonder, well, why do you want to do that? You know, your husband needs to do that because he's a pilot. Well, okay, but seemed like a fun thing for me to do, so why not do that?
Would you feel like things have changed? I mean, just the description you gave, I feel like they have, but in what ways have you seen it change for women?
In many ways it has changed in that women are more accepted in what we used to consider non-professional areas for women. For instance, and going back to the Navy, I mean, there are women in the Naval Academy now.
Right.
Shoot, if they had been allowed in when I was going off to college, I definitely would have gone in.
Might have considered. Wow.
Absolutely. Why not? It's a free education and excitement and energy that goes along with that. We still have a lot of barriers. We're still not making dollar for dollar what men are making in their careers. But on the other hand, I see an awful lot of wonderful role models that young women can look up to as they're pursuing their careers, and they know that they don't have to follow what we used to call traditional careers for women.
So, in the Maryland Commission for Women plays a big role in that, in finding those role models and promoting them as well.
Absolutely.
I understand.
We try to attract to the commission women from all facets of life, whether it's a professional career or whether it's a trade. We want them there so young women will know that there are so many different avenues that if they want to be a bricklayer, why not?
Sure.
I mean, that's just the way it is. And if they want to be a doctor, why not?
Pediatrician.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't go that route, but that's okay. I wound up in politics instead.
Oh, was that? Yeah.
But that was my choice.
Well, what was your degree in? What did you get your college degree in?
Government politics.
Wow, government politics. So are we going to be voting for you sometime?
I
soon?
don't think so. I like working behind the scenes. I've worked on a lot of campaigns.
What are some of the campaigns you've worked with?
Well, the most recent one was for the Circuit Court Judge of St. Mary's County. I worked on presidential campaigns. I worked on gubernatorial campaigns, obviously, since I worked for a governor. I've worked on congressional campaigns. But I do like that behind the scenes, making things happen work rather than being the person out front.
Right. Well, what are some of the individuals that you've worked with? I understand some individuals that have some history here with Baltimore.
Well, absolutely. Like I said before, I started out as an intern in Governor Hughes's gubernatorial office, and then I spent 8 years with Governor Schaefer the whole time. And it's fun coming down here to the harbor because one of the first things I saw when I walked in for my for my interview was the picture of him on the wall in his striped bathing suit with his duck.
Really? Oh my goodness, well I'm going to check out that picture. Well, we've got a clip to share with you about Governor Schaefer.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Shantae.
We're down here in Fells Point, Baltimore in front of Jimmy's Restaurant.
That's right, Chuck and Tammy are inside and they're going to interview Governor Donald Schaefer. So let's check it out.
All right.
Good morning. We're here at Jimmy's Restaurant with Governor Schaefer. Thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
It's a pleasure. I'm sick. Everything's in terrible shape.
Everything's in
today
terrible
is the
shape?
best looking day. It's beautiful out today. No kidding. The sun's out, the stars are out, the moon's out. It's a phenomenon today. I don't know what the word phenomenon means, but it's really nice.
It sounds good, right?
This is a nice place. This is Jimmy's place.
How long have you been coming here?
I'm 81. I've been coming here since 1847.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been here a long time. Good place.
I saw you shopping at Westview. Okay, and the thing that impressed me was there was no entourage, there was no one around, it was just Mayor Schaefer shopping at Westview, and just like everyone else. That really impressed me.
Impressed me too. I remember that day distinctly.
Oh, absolutely.
I was out there and there was a sale on, and I used to like to fight the ladies for sale items. I used to get shirts. I used to fight them, but I used to love sales. Do still buy sales now. That's the only thing I can afford. I'm practically on a relief, but I'm doing the best I can. Just carrying on.
He's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, and so say all of us, and so say all of us, and so say all of us.
That was great.
It was great. It was wonderful. I couldn't believe he did that.
And who else have you worked with? There's a woman I understand who really helped start this harbor, start the port here in Baltimore.
Oh, Helen Bentley.
Yes.
I did have a lot of interaction with her, not so much on a personal basis, but certainly via Governor Schaefer. And the same thing with Barbara Mikulski. Worked with her on various different issues, again through Governor Schaefer, although I do kind of continue on. When I'm on Capitol Hill, I always go into Barbara Mikulski's office to say hello or to sit and talk with her staff about legislation as far as it pertains to women on the federal level and what we can do to make things better on the federal level for women. Certainly the Violence Against Women Act with the Vice President as the structure for that. But certainly without people like Mrs. Bentley and her can-do attitude and watching her and Governor Schaefer together are
Actually, if you don't mind,
wonderful.
tell me. I don't know Mrs. Bentley very well. Can you share with me a little bit about, and with the audience, who Mrs. Bentley is and what her role is here in Baltimore?
I remember her primarily as a congresswoman,
Okay.
a very feisty congresswoman who would not take no for an answer.
And we actually have something to share with the audience, a clip of Mrs. Bentley.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
And Helen said, I hated the name of Helen when my family gave it to me. How many Helens are there here in the room today? Only 2 or 3. There is a couple. Anyhow, it's a great name. I remember the name Helen of Troy, or the person Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy was a myth. She was part of Greek mythology. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not a myth. I really have christened 17 American flag ocean-going ships. Commission members, look around the room. There are plenty of women warranting this recognition every year. And I want to say women are an amazing lot. And if, even way back, if the men hadn't had them in the back rooms doing all of the detail work, we would never be where we are today. Applaud yourself. I am appreciative, Commission members, because as I said the other day, I still am above ground. Think what a tsunami it might have been if I wasn't and all of a sudden I heard what was going on above me, and I decided to explode in order to thank you, and I do thank you.
Great, and I see why you said feistiness. So, yeah, share with us a little bit more about Mrs. Bentley.
Well, like I said, most of my time with her was just in short clips, almost like the clip you saw, observing her more than but interacting with her on a regular basis because of Governor Schaefer. Of course, the more recent one is she was just inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame. And the fun part of that is her feistiness showed there, too, in her acceptance speech.
Oh, is that right? What did she do?
Absolutely. And the funniest part was when she was standing down in the front talking to a lot of people near the podium, and the MC was trying to get her to sit down, and she just turned around, "I'll sit when I want to sit, and where I want to sit," and that was it. And so we just all backed off and said, okay, that's the way it is.
Well, when you've been involved in the city and the community and the state as much as that, it's you can do what you want, I suppose.
That's just her nature, and it's wonderful because she's a great role model.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be sweet and quiet and flutter your eyelashes all the time.
No, and you sound like you don't do it. It just amazes me how much you are active in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, and even it sounds like at the federal level. Any last thoughts on what we can do to help the commission?
Well, among the things you can do for the commission is your entire support. Follow our website and see what's going on and participate. For instance, about 3 years ago, we put on an economic summit, which included breakout sessions on mortgage foreclosures on women. Last year, we did a leadership conference for all the commissions for women in Maryland to join us and learn about each other. We want more participation like that.
So these are the events people can come to,
Absolutely.
learn about and come to.
Issues that you have big concerns about, please call the commission office and let us know what your concerns are so that we can follow up on them and either provide a venue to learn more about that issue or to actually go and find legislation or make legislation happen that will assist women in our communities.
Lynn, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been a delight to have you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Top of the Morning.
So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.